Okay, team, welcome back. We are on the 5th of the 5 essentials. We'll have one last video at the end of this that'll kind of wrap it all up and provide some next steps for you. These are all sort of foundation laying for you as you are embarking on a very significant journey of leading for transformation in your organization. So we've covered a ton of different topics, and the last one honestly is probably going to be the hardest of them. It's squishy. It's a difficult thing to do. But the essential number 5 is to discern culture. Discern culture. And by that, I mean not only discern it sort of in your mental state, but begin to put words around it. What is true of our organizational culture? And that is vital because if you're going to move toward a new way of being in the world, it's vital that you understand currently where you're at. Sort of a individual parallel to this would be what we did back in the very first essential is you need to begin your own soul health journey with an assessment of where are you at. And then from there, you can make progress. Similarly, an organization has a culture, a certain way of being, of what it feels like to work there, what sort of are the norms that we accept or tolerate or promote. And those will define a lot about what is possible. They are in total your results that your organization is getting, and specifically your results around spiritual formation, are an expression of your current existing culture. And I'm kind of air drawing a pyramid. I'm going to walk you through a diagram that was introduced to me from some authors that I really loved. This is one way of discerning culture. Another way that Soul Care can come alongside you is we actually have a soul health assessment that's not just for individuals, but it's actually for organizations. And many organizations are starting to use that to receive feedback from their people. Obviously, it's a survey, but completely anonymous and de-identified data. In fact, we don't even have their identities. It's not de-identified. There are no identities. But aggregated data back to you as an org leader about how your people are doing in the context of their work, which is one lens through which you could discuss and evaluate and discern what is your culture. I want to give you another paradigm for culture that might help you in this exercise because sometimes it's good to look at it from different angles. So if our assessment can be helpful to you, I think that would be. I know it has been for many organizations, and we're happy to help you with it. But there's also this book called Change the Culture, Change the Game. And it was written by some engineers, so it got a little more like engineering over the course of the book. But the basic premise I thought was incredible. And so I'm going to share it with you with my ugly not air drawing. I'm going to draw it on a little sheet of paper. So here's their premise is that culture can be thought of in a pyramid. I don't know if you can see this yet. It's a beautiful triangle, right? But there are 4 levels or layers to this pyramid that all contribute to what is experienced as culture. Culture is not like, do you celebrate people's birthdays and have a ping pong table in the, community office or something like that. That is culture. Culture is really misunderstood when we think of it as the sort of soft, like, I don't know, that we make people feel happy while they're at work. That is not culture. Culture is what it feels like to work here. That's Henry Cloud's definition. Culture is the way things happen, the unseen rules, the unseen ways of engaging. And taken in total, and that's what I love about this diagram, they actually are the deepest representation of that culture is your organization's results. And most leaders don't think about culture and results in the same sentence. But I promise you, whatever you are currently getting in terms of your results, and you could add results as it relates to spiritual formation, is Christ being formed in people? Are people more generous and loving as a result of their involvement in our ministry or not? Whatever that result might be that you're paying specific attention to, those results are absolutely a reflection of the culture of your organization. So what drives the results? What are those? What sits underneath that is behaviors. And often we think of that as a more advanced understanding of culture would start to name the behaviors that we want to see that are the way decisions are made. They are the way hiring and firing takes place. They are the way we cast vision about spiritual formation or don't. All of those behaviors are ultimately what drive our results, and behaviors, they certainly matter. So we must recognize that these two are the most visible dimensions of your culture. You can see and have conversations about how somebody handled a conflict. You can see and have conversations about how a decision went down. Those things are the behaviors that drive results. Great, got it. Okay. Underneath or below the proverbial waterline, these are the things that are visible, but the things down here are not. But you got to get to this level if you're really going to drive change in culture, and if you can discern what your current culture is. So the level below behaviors that certainly drives behaviors is your beliefs. And by this, I'm not talking about like beliefs about who Jesus is or the Bible or anything like that. Those are important beliefs in our ministry context. But these are beliefs about what does it take to get stuff done around here. These are beliefs about whether or not our organization sticks to a decision or changes randomly and episodically. Those kinds of beliefs are going to be what actually drive people's behaviors. If we believe that the most important thing in the success of our organization, back to results, is just that we get people to come back next week, then nobody's going to say that out loud, but that's a belief that's held somewhere. And that drives our behaviors, that the most important thing is whatever we do to get people back in the building, which is driving results that is highly production focused and squashing people as a result, just to be theoretical. All right, so those could be beliefs. But even below those beliefs, you can't go and just tell people to believe a new thing. That does not actually work in any area of life. Like, for example, trust. If you're not seeing behaviors of trust between teammates, and as a result, things aren't happening and there's breakdown between communication, and the belief is that if I tell this person the truth about a thing, it's not going to go well. They won't receive it. Bad decisions will be made. Any number of things or beliefs. You can't just say, oh, we got to just trust each other. That's not going to change. You can't just say, oh, trust me. No, that's not going to change. What is it that changes people's beliefs? And this is actually interesting for us to think about evangelistically and when we care about people changing some core beliefs. This is what the authors talk about, and I fully agree with them. What sits below beliefs are our experiences. Our experiences are what shape our beliefs. When we say, experience the love of God, experience forgiveness, we all of a sudden are open to believing different things about who Jesus is, about who God is, about who we are. Those beliefs change. I'm sort of shifting between beliefs as we normally think about them and beliefs as it relates to culture. But as it relates to culture, what are the experiences that people have when they're faced with a limit? And I've heard stories of this within the last week of leaders whose spouse fell very ill, and they needed to go home from their job in order to tend to the needs of their family. And they got reamed for it in a ministry context, got reamed for caring for their family. And you know what? What is that person, they've just experienced a thing. What does that tell them to believe about what it means to work there, or in the context of God's kingdom at all? And how does that start to drive their behaviors in the future? And what kind of results can that organization expect out of an employee who's been treated that way? That's a really interesting set of experiences. And then actually just yesterday, I was talking to a senior pastor who's now the lead pastor of a church that he had been executive pastor of in the past and had left on great terms and took a new role, then came back. They had really sought him when I don't know if it was the founding pastor, but the former pastor was in a succession plan. And they reached for this former executive pastor who knows the culture, loves the people. It's a really beautiful story. And this new lead pastor is saying, I am wanting to have people believe new things, that we care about their souls in the midst of their work, that we want them to flourish, and that we think that flourishing is going to be the path to organizational results. I drew this very thing for him yesterday and told him about it. And it's like, he realized that, oh, so the next time I'm having a meeting with somebody, I'm just not, because his literal question was to me, how do I help them believe that I actually care about this stuff? And I was like, great question. And I have a really encouraging word for you. They will, because they're going to experience a different thing from you. They're going to start to experience that you meet them with the kind of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. Did I miss any? And that your leadership will flow out of that space. You will not be an erratic person that sort of the idea of the day is what's flourishing or gets, sort of organizational steam. You're going to show up in a steady, kind way, and it's going to change what those folks believe about what it means to work there. So I'm bringing this to you as a way of discerning what is your culture. Go through, and you can use this pyramid if you want to start to go, all right, well, what are our current results? Like, is Christ being formed in people? Or are we seeing marriages that are continuing to be on a path of destruction or abuse that we just tell people to be quiet about? Like, what are the results of our ministry? What are the behaviors that we observe? Are people operating out of silos? Is there a lack of trust? Is there a one ministry that gets all the oxygen and nobody else does? Like, what are those behaviors? But deeper than what you can see and have a conversation about, what do you believe are the reasons for those behaviors? And then probably the most difficult is then to start going, well, what kind of experiences have people had? How can we actually have compassion and recognizing that they have been experiencing something very real, which has informed their beliefs, influenced their behaviors, and actually driven our results? Once you begin to identify those, and I've done this with leadership teams before, and it can be very painful, and you don't get too caught up in trying to understand which one is which. Just it doesn't need to be perfect. Let it be directionally right and start putting some words around these things. But then the fun, curious, co-creating part that you can do with your team is to start to say, all right, well, what would a different pyramid look like? If we were getting the kind of results we desperately want and we believe God's calling us to, well, what kind of different behaviors would need to be in place in order for that to happen? Well, and then deeper than that, what kind of beliefs might need to be present in order for those behaviors to feel normal and logical and natural? And then further then, what experiences might we want to give our team to reinforce these new beliefs, which would drive different behaviors and yield different results? So I will leave that for you to work out with your team. But the big idea in this fifth of the 5 essentials is to discern your culture. Some cultures are quite healthy. What makes them healthy? Understand that. Some cultures are really in a lot of pain. Scott McKnight has written a lot about a church called Tove. This would be another good resource for you. He has some assessment type questions at the end of that as well, that ask some really good questions that get at ways to discern culture. But whatever approach you take, our assessment, this pyramid thing, some of Scott's work, all of it, and maybe 10 other things that are on your radar, take the time, see the strategic priority of naming and discerning what is really operational in your culture right now. And do it as sort of open-eyed and willing to face that hard truth, whatever it is, as possible, because that's the only path that's going to allow you to say, here's what's current, and then where do we go from here? So I hope you see these 5 essentials are really the bedrock. These are the things that need to be in place, the essentials, that allow you then to start a process of actually whatever implementation makes sense in your context to start offering people that path of life. And I really hope you will, because it's vitally important. And now the time is now. We don't have 10 years to go figure this out. The time is now. So Godspeed, friends.